Good afternoon and welcome to a presentation by Dr. Andrzej Sztando from Wrodaw University in Poland. We're happy to host that today as part of our Community and Leadership Development Program, as well as an offering through the Community Development Society. And to get started this morning, I'd like to introduce the chair of the Community Development Society to say a word about the organization.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. The Community Development Society has been around for about almost 53 years, and we have so much to offer. There are a lot of benefits. Those of you who may not be members, I'd like you to be aware that we do have discounted registration for programs such as our annual conferences, periodic webinars. There will be a conference next week, and that's going to be 18th through the 20th. So I hope that some of you can join us. It'll be a virtual conference. We also have really two wonderful journals. Community Development is published 6 times a year, and Local Development and Society is published several times a year. These are useful publications that guide my own community development practice. We also have a number of our Vanguard newsletter, and there are opportunities, many opportunities for dialogue. It's really a place where people do feel at home and support each other in this growing field of community development. So there'll be, if you join, there's active opportunities to engage in various working groups. Community Development Society has a very potent mission, and it's really to provide a forum for the exchange of ideas about community development. We also advocate for excellence with our awards, with our publications, scholarship. There's a book series on community development, and we provide platforms for the dissemination of professional and scholarly works. It also, I think more importantly, is an opportunity for dialogue. So I do hope you consider joining the Community Development Society, being part of the organization. Conference is next week. It's virtual, and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrzej Sztando. I'm from Wrodaw University of Economics and Business, Poland, and I'm so happy to have an opportunity to present a Polish local development idea and Polish self-government system. I'm going to present you theory and practice. I will try to be much more focused on practice than theory, because I know you are very much interested in practical things. So I'm very honored, and so this is my pleasure to present you our national self-government systems. So let me introduce a little bit myself at the beginning, and of course my university. Yeah, one moment.
Well, sorry, need to do that.
Yeah. My university is a very much specialized university. This is a university which deals with the problems of economics and business. And we prepare research. We do research for our government and for our self-governments. Me personally, I deal with problems of local development strategic governance. This is my specialty. I teach public governance at the local levels, and I do research. Okay, now it's working. I do research in the area of local development strategic governance as well. I provide my private consultancy services for Polish self-governments. So I do those strategies. I support local governments with the process of implementation. I was a councillor, county councillor for 2 terms. And I decided, I won 2 times, and I decided not to try to be elected the 3rd time, because it's very hard to be a good councillor, especially if you are the chairman of the council, if you are abroad all the time, So I decided to focus on research and on the consultancy services. Let's get down to the business. What I'm going to present today and what goals I'm going to achieve today. Firstly, I'm going to present my country, Poland, as a fast-developing, transitional, post-communist country, which is deeply and strongly decentralized with long-term self-government transitions. This beginning is very important to understand how our local governments, how our self-governance system influence the development of the entire country. What is the part of this sphere, this sector of public governance in our success? The second goal I'm going to achieve today is to present you how we understand local development idea, because it's a little bit different comparing to community development idea, which is your area of research and your area of real practice. Then I will try to show you how our local self-governments are structured to stimulate those processes of local development, and how they are managed, how the local development processes are transformed into the processes of regional development and into the processes of the development of the entire country. And the third goal I'm going to achieve today is to present you what kind of research we do in Wrodaw University of Economics and Business in the fields of local self-government and local development, to attract you, of course, to cooperation, and to practical implementation of our tools we developed in my university and we tested in our self-governments during the processes of preparation and implementation local development strategies. Maybe some of those tools you will find useful, maybe some fields of research you will find interesting to, to do research financed, for example, by European Union and Polish national funds. So, general remarks about Poland. Poland is located in Central Europe. It is part of the European Union, and the area of the country is 312 square kilometers. This country is of 38 million people. Now the number is much bigger, about 4 million more, because of the refugees from Ukraine. However, I don't know if you know, there is no even one refugee camp of Ukrainians in Poland. All of them are in the Polish homes, invited as guests, or if they have a work, the majority of them work, and they rent their place of residency in the open market. The roots of the country goes back to the year 966, though, so this country is quite old, 1,000 years, with a long and rich history. Firstly, I'm going to present you our economic success. As you know, Poland is a post-communist country, transitional one. And starting from the year 1992, just after very tough and very deep reforms, we achieved quite good results in the terms of the growth. Of course, GDP indicator is not the best one, because it's a rather indicator of the growth than the development. But in fact, there are development dimensions of these indicators as well. So we can use it, and it is used all over the world. So as you can see, even during the big international crisis in the 2008 up to 2012, we achieved quite good results. There are only two countries all over the world with such long GDP growth period, Poland and Australia. And of course, the pandemic time resulted with negative GDP. However, just after this period, we achieved 5.8% GDP growth. And according to the forecast of International Monetary Fund, this year we will achieve 3.7 and 3.8 in next year. Of course, the future is not so clear. We have invasion of Russia over the Ukraine quite close, and it influences our economy very much. Additionally, our government and the entire society support Ukrainian people, Ukrainian society in many dimensions. So it's, of course, it costs. So we will see our results this year. Another very good, much better indicator is GDP per capita. As you can see on this slide, the GDP per capita of Poland during 2021, it was more than 40,000 of international US dollars. I don't know if you know what is the result of United States for this year or 2021. It's 60 and something about. So as you can see, this country is not richest country in Europe. However, it grows very fastly. I can give you some comparison. During the period 2010 up to the 2011, the growth of the Polish economy was one of the biggest in Europe. Comparing, for example, to some Western rich countries, which of course they have quite good results, but comparing to Poland, we grow very, very fast. So when we compare our economy and our society, our GDP per capita growth to the Central and Eastern European countries in the period 1990 to 2020. 1990, it is a very important year because it was the first year just after the winning independence back. Till the 2020, the results of the Polish growth are very, let's say, impressive. However, it's still not very well developed country. We developed very quickly. However, just after the long period of the communism, long period of wars, we have much more to do. One of the most important Polish reforms which strongly contributed to the development of Poland was self-government, I mean decentralization reform. We achieved independence back in year 1989. However, our self-government system, our self-government idea is much more older. We can find the first information about the decentralization and about the self-government roots in the 13th century. And this idea of decentralization, it survived even during the period of 123 years of occupation. We've been attacked from the three sides by the neighboring country, and our country disappeared for the period 123 years. And we did 9 uprisings. 9 uprisings, and the last one was successful.
1918.
Yeah, you are right. 1918. Just after the First World War, the big European powers, they were weak just after the war. So our uprising was successful. And just after the winning independence back, we established self-governments as an official elements of our public governance system, very similar to contemporary. It was local governments, sub-regional governments, and regional governments as well, because it was a part of our tradition. However, those self-governments survived only till the Second World War, during which we've been attacked from both sides by the Germany and 2 weeks later by the Russia. Of course, during the war, during the occupation, the Germans and Russians as well, they canceled any self-government activities. The huge number of the people which were involved into the public governance sector, they were imprisoned and killed, so our elites were removed, let's say, from public sector, from those activities. Just after the Second World War, we tried to re-establish our self-governments once again, but it was successful only partially and only for a few months, because, as you know, we were under the control of the Soviet Union without independent government, without the possibility to make independent decisions. And self-government idea is very much connected to democracy. So the Soviets, they recognized this idea as a threat for communist power. So all those activities were canceled till the year 1989. Even during the period of communism, our scientists, our researchers in the universities, they prepared legal acts, unofficially, of course, because it was banned, what kind of self-government system we could have if we achieve independence back once again. So all those legal acts were prepared, and during the first weeks of the independence were approved, and our self-governance system started once again. Firstly, communes, then counties and voivodeships, I mean regions. What the system is looks like today. At the first level, we have a communes. At the second level, we have a districts. And at the third level, we have regions. There is no single one square meter of the country which is not the part of some commune. We have 2,478 communes in Poland. You can count if you want. I tried a few times. Yeah. And we have 312 districts. Of course, there is no single 1 square meter of the country which is not a part of some country. And 16 regions. We call them voivodeships. But I will use the word regions. You know, it's much easier. So, 3 levels. Now I'm going to present you the first level, local self-government. I mean communes. There are very important features of our decentralization. The first one, as I said before, this is the division for the, communes, districts, and region. And the second one, the second very important feature of the decentralization is the decentralization of power. What does it mean? That the state government transferred all powers for electing and dismissing self-government authorities to the inhabitants. They are not appointed. They are elected by the society, by the local community for the 5 years term of office. And the self-government consists of 2 bodies, decisive body and executive body. Decisive body is the council, and executive body at the local level is a mayor. This is 1 person executive body. But the council, the number of councillors depends, of course, on the number of inhabitants. The function of the council is to undertake the most important decision referring to the communal tasks. The same system is at the level of the counties, and the same system is at the level of the regions. However, in counties and regions, executive body is a board, not 1 person. It's a board. It's from 3 up to 5 persons elected by the people. The function of the function of executive body is, of course, is to execute the resolutions undertaken by the decisive body. The third important feature of our reform at the beginning of our independence time is a decentralization of public tasks in line with a very important rule, very important for our society. This rule is a subsidiarity rule. What does it mean? It means that the authorities of territorial self-governments deal with these public problems which are close to them and most important to them. For example, regional authorities deal with the problems of regional importance. For example, railroads, airports, flood protection, infrastructure, etc. Regional public transport, innovativeness development, science and research development, those things. District, I mean county authorities, they deal with sub-regional issues like secondary schools, job market development, hospital treatment, public order, citizen safety, etc. And local, I mean communal authorities, they deal with problems of local importance. So even if we have so huge number of authorities, every of them, they deal with different problems on the different territories. Now I'm going to present what kind of tasks our local governments execute, our local self-governments execute. There are 2 types of those tasks. The first one are obligatory tasks. What does it mean? That every commune has to execute those tasks. But there is another group, facultative ones, which means that there is no specific list of facultative tasks. This is only the area of independence, let's say, borders of independence, which I'm going to present a little bit later. Let's start with obligatory tasks. For example, the first obligatory task is a spatial plan. In Poland, communes, I mean local self-governments, decide how private and public real estate may be used. For example, they can decide that your real estate, your land could be used only for, let's say, agriculture or for some residential buildings. Of course, you can propose, but decision is on the local government. Water supply, of course, municipal sewage treatment, waste management, public places cleaning, environment protection, kindergarten parent education, education in primary schools, social aid and protection, providing and supporting culture and art, fostering sport and recreation, creating communal green areas, and for example, one of the obligatory tasks is to build and to rent apartments to inhabitants of the commune. And they construct local roads and all the infrastructure which accompanying the local roads, and of course the provision of order and public safety. For example, those are city guards in Wrocław. Of course, those horses are used only in a historic center partially as attraction for the tourists, but they are regular city guards as well. And they run local libraries, they care over the historical buildings and monuments, they provide public transport services, and they promote investment values of the commune. As you can see, the list is long. However, they are facultative tasks as well. What kind of facultative tasks? For example, they can run hotels, they can run healthcare centers, museums, theaters, hospitals, airports, aquaparks, ski lifts, colleges, even high schools and universities. They publish newspapers, they develop professional qualifications of inhabitants, they construct hydrotechnical infrastructure, they support agriculture, enterprises, they foster small and medium enterprises. There is a rule that everything is possible which is not reserved for the state, or everything which is legal and not reserved to the other public entities, mostly to the state. So, can they, for example, issue passports? Of course not, because this is the task of the state. Can they establish any military forces? Of course no, because it is for the state. But can they, for example, build incubator of entrepreneurship? The special company which supports small and medium enterprises to be more innovative, more competitive, etc. So you can wonder how much facultative tasks they do in real practice. It depends on the will of the local authorities, it depends on the money they have, or they they can attract from, for example, external funds like national state funds or European funds or other sources. In real practice, the amount of the facultative tasks they execute is in majority cases much bigger than those obligatory ones. So this is a huge area of additional activities they design and they want to implement, they want to have. The fourth very important feature of the reform is a decentralization of policies tools for, of course, those task implementation. So the state authorities decide that they transferred from the state government to self-government organizational, financial, and legal tools which are necessary to design and implement local, sub-regional, and regional public policies. What kind of tools they can use? They can use regulations, I mean local law, subsidies, services, banks, guarantees, information, grants, and for example, some contracts. So the pocket of the tools they have is quite broad. You can compare such tools to the tools that state government have. However, those are, of course, at the, let's say, local dimensions. They are not such powerful as the state one. The fifth very important feature of the reform is the decentralization of public finance, because if you want to implement local development policy, the tools are not enough. You have to have money, and of course, a huge amount of money. So they have real estate tax, which depends on how big and real estate is and how it is used. They have shares in state taxes. For example, we have in Poland personal income tax. It is not very current data because starting from the beginning of this month, this tax was lowered to the level of 13%, from 18 to 13 to stimulate the economy. However, the 38% of this PIT tax collected is going to the local budgets when the people leave. Taxpayers. Another part is going to the budget of the country, another to the budget of the region, and the rest is going to the budget of the state. The same situation is with the CIT tax, corporate income tax. 6.7% of those incomes are going to the local budgets. Farming tax, forest tax, car tax, marketplace charge, revenues from the communal property, subsidies and grants from the state budget, incomes from communal services for inhabitants enterprises. For example, when they deliver services in terms of public transport, they collect monies for tickets. And they have grants from EU budget for specific projects. I don't know if you know how much money Poland received from European Union during the period 2007-2014. Why 2007-2014? Because it was a programming period of the European Union. Could you guess? It was 195 billion of euro. We paid our share, so the net was about 133. And during the next period, during the next period from 2021 to 2027, we will receive probably about 100 net. So, of course, those money are very important, and the huge amount of investments of the self-governments was financed by the European Union and probably will be. However, comparing to the money they have from their own incomes, it is about 20%. The rest are the money from their own sources or from the Polish state. The sixth very important feature of the reform was the decentralization of responsibility. In my opinion, it is the most important part of decentralization, because even if you have money, the question is who is responsible, who decides what you do. And our decentralization of responsibility, it was a transfer of responsibility for public tasks execution from state government to the self-government. As a result, all Polish self-government became substantive independent. What does it mean? I will try to use some example to explain what kind of independence it is. Let's imagine that our local self-government, I mean councillors, they decided to build new school. However, let's imagine that they decided to build this school even if they didn't collect all the money necessary to finish this investment. Let's say they have 30% and they are optimistic. We will receive some money in the future, but let's start with those money we have now. So it was a plan. And let's imagine that after a few years, let's say after 2 years, they achieved such result. As you can see, unfinished building. The construction works stopped. And for example, this construction deteriorated, gets devastated, robbed, you know. And let's imagine that they decided to think once again what they can do with this unfinished building. And let's imagine they decided to rebuild this building to the culture center, communal local culture center. However, let's imagine that they didn't finish this building and the final result was like that. Yeah, and they decided to sell it for a very, very small amount of money, you know. That's some story to make very important questions. The first one, is rational such way of public money spending? Of course, no. But let's ask a second question. Do Polish self-government authorities have the right to do it? Yes. Of course, yes. And we can ask why. Because they are self-government authorities, not some dependent territorial administrators, but self-government authorities, and they have substantive independence. So, who are self-government authorities responsible to? Aren't they state authorities? And the answer is only to commune, district, and regional inhabitants. In the case of the commune, to the local inhabitants only, who elect them and who dismiss them, even during the term. If the people are unhappy about the decisions undertaken by local government, during the term, they can collect signatures and they can send the list of those signatures to the state, and the state agency of elections announcing a referendum. Means that the people will officially vote. Are they happy with those authorities or no? If majority is not happy, they are dismissed and new elections are announced only for this one specific commune. How often we have such, let's say, situations? We have 2,478 communes, and during the last term, it happened about 100 times. And the result of the 30% of those referendums was to remove current authorities and start the new elections till for the quite short term till the end of the this original 5 years terms of office. And this substantive independence is protected by Polish law. If the state interferes self-government, even the smallest one, they can bring the case to court and win. There are only 2 rules. Firstly, everything should be in line of law. Of course, for example, when those council decides to build a new school, is it possible to make a contract with the construction company which is ownership of the wife of the mayor? Of course, it's not possible. It should be, tender prepared, and so the best offer should be selected. Of course, all the decisions should be undertaken in line with state law. For example, the number of the councillors during the process of making decision should be enough. We call it quorum. So in those area, our self-governments are under the permanent state supervision. Any money spent has to be spent in line with the procedures set by state authorities, and there is an additional state supervision. We have a special state agency which monitor how local governments, how local self-governments and other self-governments, how they collect and how they spend public money. However, the decisions, what to do, how to do, and when to do are the broad area of their independence. So they develop some policies. They decide what they do. They decide what the goals they want to achieve. Yeah, and I'm going to give you additional, additional light for the specific approach we started to use when we implement our local development policies in our Polish self-governments. Execution of all those tasks is, of course, very complicated, difficult, and multidimensional endeavor. And all the Polish self-governments, they need, of course, to establish communal companies and other institutions. When we talk about commune, of course, there is a decisive body, there is an executive body, but they are companies and other institutions which are the ownership of the self-government to implement all those tasks. They are at the same law as the private companies, but the ownership is public. But the rules are almost the same. Of course, they are also different institutions which are not companies. However, they are ownership of the self-government as well. For example, the Wrocław commune, the Wrocław commune has about 200 of such companies, starting from airport, ending to the, let's say, kindergartens. So this is the number of people which work in a public companies which belongs to the self-governments in Poland, you can count it in hundreds of thousands of employees. So it's a huge sector with a huge money. When we compare the money which are managed by the state and the total money which are managed by the self-governments at all the levels, the second part is bigger comparing to the state money. So, as you can see, this country is developed by the two sectors of public governance managers, the state and the self-government authorities as well. Going back to the presentation, they need to establish communal companies and other institutions. They have to, of course, do number of investments. They have to they have to non-stop dialogue with local society. They have to cooperate with private and public entities. They are in close collaboration with district and regional authorities because all the self-governments cooperate, but they are independent, so they make agreements as free entities, let's say. There is no supervision of the county authorities over the local authorities. There is no supervision of regional authorities over the country authorities of local authorities. They are independent, so if they cooperate, they are free to decide what they sign. They have to do detailed forecasting and planning, of course, and they need money, information, knowledge, employees, time, and space. So additionally, all those tasks have to be executed, have to be prepared and executed in unstable supra-local and local conditions. Technology is changing, law, economy, policies, politics. We have, of course, migrations, pollution, social trends, different values, and climate change. There's a huge conditions in which they have to execute those tasks. So the question is how to do it in the best way, and the answer is let's use local development strategic planning. And our local self-government started to prepare and to implement local development strategies from the very beginning, from the beginning of the 90s, but it was only in a few % of them. It was an approach which was very modern and not obligatory one. So only the best local authorities decided to look for possibilities how to prepare and how to implement some local development strategy. And local development strategic governance as an approach means preparation and implementation local development strategy, of course. And local development strategy in Poland is a multi-dimensional long-term plan of the common development, which includes specific goals and local development, the specific project, as well as the implementation and evaluation procedures. Polish local authorities started to use such strategies at the beginning of the 90s, and they were prepared in close cooperation with, of course, with local community, local businesses, and external experts. Currently, local development strategies are still not obligatory. However, starting from the year 2020, they are regulated by the state. It means that if the local self-government decides to prepare and implement local development strategy, the standards have to be met. The standards of the content and the standards of the procedure of preparation and implementation of this local development strategy. And they will be obligatory soon because we are under the implementation of the additional reform of spatial planning. Because one of the problems we have in Poland is a problem of different approaches to preparation and implementation local development strategies and different approaches to the preparation and implementation spatial plans. So sometimes, I can say very often, the real strategy is a spatial plan. Then strategy as a document with specific goals, because if you decide that specific places, specific real estates could be used only for specific purposes, it is not only spatial decision, this is decision, of course, in the terms of economy and society as well. Soon our local development strategies will be obligatory. And about now we assess in our university that about 30% of our local development strategies are of good quality. However, it's not impressive share. However, more and more our local development strategies are better and refer to the most important contemporary factors of development. I translated a part of our legal act which say what parts local development strategy should consist of. As you can see, the commune may develop the Article 10E.1, a commune may develop a commune development strategy. It should be consistent with the voivodeship development strategy, I mean regional development strategy. The commune development strategy firstly contains conclusion from the diagnosis of the social, economic, and spatial situation. Then it should point strategic development goals, directions of activities, expected results, and indicators of their achievement, the model of functional and spatial structure of the communes, and many, many more parts. So, for example, now our universities, including my university, we try to support all our local self-governments with preparation, good quality local development strategies in line with those standards. What is the result of our self-government system, and what is the result of our decentralization, let's say? Of course, as you know, we have three types of self-government territories. There is a decentralization of power, tasks, policies, tools, public finance, responsibility. And of course, execution of those tasks is a complicated, difficult, multidimensional endeavor implemented in unstable conditions. So we started to use local development strategies with regulated standards. The result is effectiveness and efficiency of public task implementation. One of the most important results is creativity and innovativeness of local authorities, because, as you know, they are in a broad area free what kind of the goals they can design and implement, even if sometimes they make mistakes. Of course, everybody do. But as you can see, the balance of the costs of mistakes and benefits of the creativity is highly positive for the society, economy, environment. That's why we allow them to make mistakes in the system. Because if you try to punish every mistake, the result will be that everybody will wait for your orders. No, what have I do? No, it will be your responsibility connected to your order. And we don't want it. We want to have very innovative and very creative local authorities. So this country is developing so quickly, of course, because of the many factors, but one of the most important factors is decentralization in the form of self-governance at the local, sub-regional, and regional level. And at the end, just a few words about the research in the field of local development conducted by Wrodaw University of Economics and Business. For example, this is my area, but of course not only, supralocal relations of the communes. So we try to answer the question, what's supralocal? I mean, regional, national, global factors influence local development of the specific commune or all the communes, most and how local authorities should react to it. Another field of our research is a multi-level governance. As you know, we have 3 levels and a number of authorities, and we have to connect somehow the policies they design and they implement, because of course they have to be independent. However, they have to cooperate as well. So we want to have cohesion in their development policies, but at the same time, we want to maintain a strong creativity and innovativeness of local authorities. Another dimension of our research is the integration of different fields of local development governance. For example, how to connect financial management with a strategic governance, and how to involve it. The same with a spatial planning. Of course, community involvement, you know very well how it is important. And for example, local economic development. So we can answer, we try to answer questions, how can local self-governments attract new investors, adjust qualifications of inhabitants to the needs of the entrepreneurs, and other very important questions for LAD. Social and economic local innovativeness. Innovativeness is a key factor, as we all know, of development, not only in dimension of economy. So we try to answer how to make local self-governments, local community, and local economy, how to make them search for innovations, absorb innovations, implement innovations, create and disseminate them. And last but not least, of course, sustainable development. We want to answer what is the sustainable development on the local scale and how to achieve it. What can and should be a participation of our local self-governments in, for example, energy transition and in achieving sustainable development goals. So those are the fields of our research. Of course, there is much more than I presented, but those are much important for us. Thank you very much for attention. I'm, of course, ready for your question. And I will try to answer. If not, I will try to prepare answer and send you in the following days. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the group? Or it seems to me that the map that you showed of the communes, some were islands within larger communes. Given that there are opportunities for developing airports, I'm imagining that it could become very competitive between the communes. That one would say, well, we're building an airport, you can't build an airport, or they're both building an airport 3 miles from each other. So say a little bit about what are some best practices, or what is the way that the university intervenes or helps facilitate those?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And of course, such competition, let's say, is a phenomenon which could be recognized as beneficial or, let's say, anti-beneficial at the same time.
Right.
However, our local governments, our local self-governments, they try to compete and they cooperate at the same time. So, for example, the state and the European Union finance projects designed and implemented by the groups of the commune. If we talk about, for example, such airport, it could be a project implemented by the, let's say, number of, let's say, 10 or 20 of communes in some, let's say, agglomeration, which are very much connected in a different dimension. And this project could be designed in a way which will be beneficial for all of them. But sometimes they compete very, let's say, it could be very tough competition. For example, when there is an international investor and it looks for a place to invest some millions of euro, you know, and the plan is, for example, to hire 1,000 of new employees. Our communes can compete in, you know, in a very tough competition.
Yes.
However, it's good because the years of such competitions made them competitive even in the international scale. Because, you know, the capital could move freely all over the European Union, even in a global scale as well. So, for example, sometimes our commune offer of our commune, supported by the offer of the state, could be much more competitive comparing to the offer of some Chinese region or, let's say, Italian ones and other. So this competition could be, you know, the factor of development as well. Yeah.
So good question, Dan, because that was one of my questions about cooperation, particularly at the commune level. Could you help me understand? I guess it's really a test of this idea of decentralization. And I'm putting on, my undergrad was international politics, so this stuff fascinates me. To what extent, like here in the US, we struggle with states' rights versus national kind of federal law and jurisdiction, where in some cases states can make stricter regulations or policies. I think like California can often has stricter, you know, environmental regulations, air standards, firearm laws and regulations that compared to a federal, sometimes things are even just absent in federal. Could you help me understand, are there cases where the communes could make policy within the areas of their responsibility? Because you kind of laid it out that certain levels have certain scales of responsibility and even areas of responsibility. Are there areas of policy or aspects of life that communes could make policy that might be stricter, more lenient than equivalent policies at I guess at a district, region, or the state level?
Yeah.
And how does that get fought out in court? Or
it's one of our fields of research. We call it multi-dimensional governance. You know, maybe not the same, but similar goals. However, different entities of public governance. You know, we don't have such problem with federal law and state law because the Poland is not divided to the states.
Yeah.
This is when I say the state, I mean the country.
Yeah.
You know, this is that's the most countries in Europe function in that way. However, it is not possible to push local governments, self-governments, by the decision of the country self-governments, of regional self-governments, because they are independent in their areas of the responsibilities, let's say. Does it mean there is no conflicts? Of course, there are conflicts. However, we try to solve them collectively. Sometimes it could be end with happiness of all the parts. Sometimes not, but there are specific areas of decisions in which the state has the last word. Let's say, for example, security. For example, military facilities, or for example, international relations, because there are some communes which are at the border of the country. So their development can influence not only Poland, but the neighboring countries as well. So the last word is on the state. And comparing to the other countries, we don't have problems which are very common, for example, in the countries in which there are different, the society consists of the people of different nationalities. Yeah. This country is so unified in the terms of the nationality. 98% of the people are out of Polish nationality. Now we have Ukrainians, so this percentage is lower. However, we don't have such problems, to have a risk that if you give too much independence to some region of local area, you will have some movements to spread out of the country, let's say. So that's why we can use such liberal system. I don't know how to say it properly.
It's an interesting idea, and we were limited in this country. The idea of the right to self-determination. This, in your example, seems to be codified within the way government is structured, in that it gets to such a granular level of, and I'm trying to create an equivalent of what a commune might be. So maybe Lexington is a unique example because Lexington and the county government are joint. They're together. But in other counties within Kentucky, you have county government, and then you might have a city or a town within, and it has its own. But by and large, municipalities, towns, cities, things like that, counties, aside from, I'm thinking, and correct me, Dan, if I'm wrong, like aside from tax and maybe public health, I guess, they're by and large subservient to state law and state policies. And so this idea of folks, citizens, electing people who they want to lead them at a very local level to create policies that are very reflective of the local people. We just don't have that here in this country because it's 50% plus one gets you the winning party. And the way we have gerrymandering, it means you can have policies that control the lives of a vast number of people when a large majority of those people wouldn't choose to have those policies. So it's an interesting idea.
Let me add two words. The first one, the state government, they try to attract local self-governments to achieve a specific goals. In what way? They finance projects which are in line with a state policy. For example, when we have, for example, energy transformation, everything we are pushed because of the war to do it. So, of course, the state can wait for the independent activities of self-governments. However, they try to convince local self-governments to do more in such area, financing their projects in area of energy transformation. So the money can unify development policies on the different levels. However, if the financial independence of the local or regional self-governments will be weak, and all the money, even the bigger one, all the money will come from the state. It means that the state decides what the policy the local and regional governments implement. So it would be end of the self-governance. So it is necessary to have, balanced system. The part of the money transferred by the state to the local and regional self-governments in line with state strategy, and the other part, independent money to spend on the independent, very different goals and projects. So, and in the result, we have not only the state engine of the development as a result of the state policies, big one, macroeconomic, but we have 2,479 small engines of development in which produce the development processes which transform into the regional development processes and the state development processes as well. That's why we maintain this system, and we want to, make it better and better, and not to change to anyone other. Yeah.
Sometimes self-government also doesn't necessarily spell out into true civic participation. People may be passive and let the smaller governments do their work, but how do you involve, what structures or educational programs or nurture true civic involvement, if any?
Thank you very much for this question. If you want to have involved society, you have to start in the kindergarten. Yeah, I can give you some examples. We had and still have in Poland problem with places in which illegal garbage is stored. In the forests, the people try to put the garbage in different places. You have
illegal
okay.
dumping.
I don't know the word.
Yep.
So there is a very popular project in all over the Polish communes that the children from the kindergarten visit such places, make photos by their smartphones. They they prepare some reports, very simple, what kind of garbage they found where this it's located, and they visit council during the sitting, during the when they make some law, and they present, that councillors, we found some garbage, those are children, 5, 6, 4 years old. Then, of course, the council is prepared, everything is arranged. Then council decide to implement some projects to, remove those garbage from those places. And the children visiting those places once again to see the change. This is kind of education. When they will be older, will they put the garbage in such places? Probably no. Additionally, there is an education of their parents as well, because those children, they describe all those, activities they have in kindergarten to the parents. So this is the way how to educate the parents as well. And of course, there is the simple and short answer for your question is to prove that the words of the people become reality. If you ask the people to, express their needs, their will, etc., and the years are going past by 1 second and nothing is happening, will they trust you next time? If if your promises are transformed to reality, they will be involved. So we, for example, during the preparation of local development strategies, we have lots of such meetings, workshops with different parts of society, with even with children, with elderly people, with entrepreneurs and other members of local society.
Which group sets things like emission standards for production? Just something as simple as that. Is that local or is that state?
State and European Union partially as well. Yeah.
And things like gun laws, are those state or are they local?
Gun law.
Yeah, like whether or not you can own a gun, buy,
you know, thank you for this question. Thank you very much for this question. Because Poland is a totally different country in this dimension comparing to the United States, because we are not allowed. We are not allowed to have a gun.
But is that a state law or is that a
State law?
community law?
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
state law, and even if some community will decide to allow to have a gun, it's illegal to make some such resolution. You know, in Poland, if you want to have a gun, you have to be hunter, and this is not the gun with bullets. I don't know the specific terms for the guns, but there is no bullet. There are very small balls, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot
To
shotgun.
hunt, to
Function.
hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably
So this is yeah, and that's all. That's all. There is a huge discussion in Poland if the people should have a guns or not. However, the security in Poland, you can check in the statistical data. We have very secure and very safe country. We don't need such guns. For example, you can, in every Polish city, you can feel the safe in every time of the day, during the night. It's incomparable, for example, to the western part of the Europe.
How are curriculums decided for local schools? Curriculums, like whether or not you can teach critical race theory or.
Yeah, okay. I will give you. There is a system in which the state decides about the core of the education program at all the levels. However, local governments can add additional education activities to the program, and only in a few possible cases it should be approved by the state institutions. What I mean, that you can teach in our schools everything which is approved by the state and in line with a program unified for all the schools, primary and secondary schools in the country.
Does that include the university?
Excuse me?
Does that include university?
No, universities are free to decide about the programs of studies, and they are much more independent in other dimensions comparing to the primary or secondary schools. Because universities have to be places of free thinking, so that's why they are protected by law in their independence.
I know we're at time here. I just have one brief question. Do those jurisdictions, those boundaries ever change?
Of course, we are under the constant reform starting from the 90s. Because of course, when we compare Poland to the different countries, sometimes we are at the bottom of the list of the countries with a stable law. Because there are countries in which they have a very stable law, they are on the top, and somebody can think, okay, Poland is not very good country to invest, not very good to live, because they change every day the law. No? However, why we change this law so frequently? Because the world is changing. And the law should follow those changes, even our changes, what we want to achieve. And another reason is that this country, starting from the 90s, all the law was prepared to support communism. It is not easy to change all the laws to support democracy and other values which are against of the communism. So we are under the constant reforms.
Thank you, Sztando. Thank you so much for this presentation today. And we will stick around if others would like to continue, but for the sake of the recording, I'm going to stop it here. And so thank you again for.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.